Good morning. My name is Kathy Desilets, and I am your worship associate for this morning. Welcome to the First Religious Society Unitarian Universalist in Newburyport, Massachusetts. As we mentioned last week, this is our 295th year as a church community. We've been through some things. We are living in challenging times. Forces press upon us that suggest we best live in fear, separation, and blame. Instead, we choose to come together as a church community, committed to love, peace, and justice. Our ancestors and this building have been through difficult times before. We enter this year strengthened by their experience, wisdom, and ever-abiding presence, and by our own commitment to come as we are, journey together in love, act with courage, and transform our world. If you are visiting today or joining us for the first time, we are especially glad you are here with us this morning. If you're joining us online, there are links you can click to see today's order of service and the hymns so you can sing along. If you joined from YouTube, the links are just below the live stream. Please click on the word more to see them. If you are watching from our website, there are buttons below the live stream. Every Sunday, we say it is no small thing that we have gathered. This morning and every morning in this time, it is a particularly big thing that we have gathered. So let us give ourselves to it. I welcome one and all to our church and to our worship service. Thank you. It is good to be together.
Our opening words this morning are written by Margaret A. Keep. As surely as we belong to the universe, we belong together. We join here to transcend the isolated self, to reconnect, to know ourselves to be at home, here on earth, under the stars, linked with each other. You are faithfully called to worship. Please join me in saying the chalice lighting words while Kathy lights the chalice. The words are printed in your order of service. If you have a chalice or candle at home, I invite you to light it now. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. Each week, we also light 2 candles of peace, representing 2 places on earth we lift up and remember as a sacred encounter with our world. There are untold number of places on earth that need peace. These 2 we especially hold close in this service and through the week ahead. After each candle is lit, we will speak the words for peace in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. Peace, salam, shalom. Our first candle is lit for the streets of Newburyport, where the Jeannie Geiger Crisis Center Walk Against Domestic Violence begins today. May we aspire to a day when all people everywhere are safe in their own homes and in the wider world. Peace, salam, shalom. Our second candle is lit for the United States, a land of people in desperate need of healing, reconciliation, strength, courage, and a peaceful way forward. Peace, salam, shalom. This morning, we also light a candle of hope and remembrance in recognition of the COVID-19 pandemic, all those who are struggling for economic security, all those fighting for their health, and all those who have lost their lives. We will light this candle each time we worship for as long as we live into this worldwide reality. Please join now in singing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. We will sing verses 1 and 2. kindle one flame, witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather in celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
Please join me in our affirmation of faith. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer.
To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue.
Since 2010, members and friends of the First Religious Society have been sharing their personal journeys of faith as an element of our worship liturgy. Several journeys of faith are shared each year. This morning, it is our pleasure and honor to bring you the journey of faith of Sandra Thaxter.
Okay, go ahead. Good morning. My name is Sandra Thaxter, and this is my journey of faith. I'm so proud to be sharing this journey of faith with you at this moment in our history when the faces, the voices, and the souls of Black women are at the forefront of our social and political changes. It is through knowing women like these who have succeeded beyond all odds that I have found my way to a deeper, more grounded faith. I grew up with the Catholicism of my mother and the Episcopal faith of my father. I don't regret this upbringing. My sense of the sacred and my values of service came from those early experiences. This story is about the deepening of my faith emerging from my relationships with African women, first with the immigrants here in our community, and then meeting women when I worked at UNICEF in New York City. In New York City, I was also able to work with the UN UU office, and that opened the doors to a broader vision of the Unitarian Universalist mission. When I returned from New York City, with some African refugee friends, we started a nonprofit called Small Solutions to bring education and technology to rural African communities. This involved my traveling to Kenya, where I became fully engaged with African youth and women. My experiences in Africa have brought me closer to people for whom God is present in their everyday life. Over the years, along with my colleagues, we visited many schools in rural communities. At a school in an area of failed coffee farms, I arrived early before the students. The roof of the classroom building was open and birds sat on the beams above the desks. The light streamed in under the eaves, showering dust around us. The teacher was there already. She was wearing a bright flowered dress. I asked her how she managed with so many students. She said that it was prayer and the grace of God that sustained her. I looked into her calm countenance and I could see that she was full of strength and light. I stood there with her in her presence with God in that classroom with a hazy light falling around us. I am witness to the faith of these women and others like them. I see their open hearts. I listen to their songs and their prayers. I walk where they walk. I learn from them what it means to be steadfast to a community. My faith is strengthened by these journeys. A pilgrimage is not about a destination or a miracle that will suddenly make clear our way. It is about the journey itself, the joining in faith with others that unfolds and changes us. Throughout my journey, it has been my UU beliefs that have guided me and allowed me to be open to witnessing and sharing this faith and hope. Thank you.
And thank you to Sandra. This is the time in our service when the offering will be gratefully received. This month, half of our collection goes to support the Greater Newbury Elder Pet Project, serving Newburyport, West Newbury, Amesbury, Salisbury, and Rowley. The fund was established to ensure that none of our elder neighbors would have to lose their dog or cat because they cannot afford food or veterinary care. It works closely with area councils on aging to identify elders in need. Then collects and distributes pet food and financial donations. If you're joining us online, there is a link you can use to make your donation online. You can also text a contribution by sending the word GIVEFRSUU, give FRSUU, to the number 73256. That's 73256. And of course, you can always mail a check to the church as well. The offering will now be gratefully received.
This is the time in our service when we lift up the joys and sorrows from within our beloved congregation. This first candle is a candle of joy, and what a joyful one it is. Reverend Rebecca writes, "Please join me in saying congratulations to Sophia Lyons, who passed the ministerial fellowship credentialing process with flying colors and is now ready to be ordained into the Unitarian Universalist ministry. The FRS will be ordaining Sophia next May, pandemic pending. Congratulations, Sophia. We are so proud of you." And we light a candle for Stanley and Carol Kilty, who were able to safely celebrate Stanley's 90th birthday with family last weekend. And we light one final prayer for those joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, but which are held close. Please join me now in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunities this day brings, opportunities to open our hearts, to listen deeply to another, to connect, for the opportunity to forgive, to share joy, to witness grace. We offer thanks for those who create beauty in the world through music or art, for those who make us laugh, for the innocence of children and the wisdom of elders. Hold in your loving embrace those who are lonely, those who grieve, those who are sick, and those who are otherwise not well. Help us to see them and reach out to them. Spirit of life and of love, grant us peace. Amen.
Our reading for this morning is a wisdom tale of unknown origins, widely told in various traditions. This version was written by Eliza Davy Pearmain. Once, there was a monastery that had fallen upon hard times. Some of the younger monks left in dissatisfaction, and no new ones were joining. There were but a handful of monks and their leader, the abbot, remaining. They began fighting among themselves, each blaming the hard times on the faults and failings of the others. One day, a traveling rabbi stopped at the monastery for a night's rest. He ate and prayed alongside the other monks. The next day, as the rabbi prepared to continue on his journey, the abbot drew him aside, told him of the problems of the monastery, and asked him for his observations and for some advice to share with the other monks. Upon hearing the abbot's woes, the rabbi was quiet for some time. "Cannot you give me some advice to help my monastery to thrive again?" the abbot begged. "Your monks will not listen to advice," the rabbi replied, "but perhaps they would benefit from an observation. The Messiah dwells among you here at the monastery." "One of us?" asked the abbot, astonished. "Which one?" "Oh, that I cannot say," he answered. "Share this with your brothers, and in time it will be revealed to you." The abbot thanked him and sent him on his way. He then gathered the monks together, who listened in amazement to the news. One of us? But who? Each one asked aloud. Then to themselves they wondered. It couldn't be Brother Robert, or could it? Surely not Brother Henry, but there are times when not the youngest. Well, maybe the abbot himself. Could it be me? Soon things began to change at the monastery as each began to see the Messiah in the other and to hear the Messiah's words in each word spoken. Soon, people began to wander back to the monastery. And in time, new monks joined, and the monastery thrived.
The word Messiah holds no personal meaning for me. I don't believe in a Messiah in the traditional sense, Messiah with a capital M, someone who is chosen by God to save the rest of us. But the story we just heard speaks to me anyway. I don't think that one has to believe in an actual capital M Messiah to be touched by the story. We can adapt it to suit our personal theologies. I adopt the Messiah in the story to mean someone with a spark of the divine. You might think of it as someone who has the potential to do great things, or as someone who is deeply, undeniably connected to yourself. Please substitute whatever idea is comfortable for you as we consider this story. I preached about the story in 2010 in a sermon in which I went on to describe the undertaking of what I called the Messiah Project. Inspired by it, I decided to catch myself whenever I started thinking ill of someone, and I would say to myself, but maybe that's the Messiah. Could I train myself to see the Messiah, I asked, or the holy, the divine, in others, and in turn treat them with more respect and kindness? That sermon was fun to write as I described the numerous incidents of squelched semi-road rage that ensued. Suddenly, there were a lot of messiahs populating the streets and highways of Massachusetts, cutting me off in traffic or committing some other roadway sin against me. I took deep breaths and reassured myself that each and every one of them could indeed be the Messiah. There came a point in the sermon, of course, when I shared that I understood that the story really was not about making myself feel calmer as I drove around. I had the feeling that I could take it deeper. I dug into the notion of radical hospitality, quoting Father Daniel Homan and Lonnie Collins Pratt from their book, Radical Hospitality. Acceptance. Now, there's a word loaded with meaning. We tend to confuse it with tolerance or even approval. But acceptance is about receiving rather than judging. Acceptance is not about condoning, it is about embracing. When we accept, we take an open stance to the other person. It is more than merely piously tolerating them. We stand in the same space and we appreciate who they are right now at this moment and affirm the sacred in them. Further along in their book, they write, "It is possible to serve meals in a nursing home, to cook in a homeless shelter, to read stories to children at an inner city library and never let others into your heart. It is possible to do the good things and end up feeling satisfied with yourself and even just a bit superior. It is possible to do the good thing and not be changed for the better by it. Radical hospitality includes cooking the meal and reading to the kid, but it demands that you let the people you are serving into your heart. Only in opening yourself wide to another are you transformed by the power of love." Father Daniel Homan is a Benedictine monk who practices what is referred to as radical hospitality. Derived from the theology of Saint Benedict, it revolves around the idea that we must treat each other with compassion, not simply because it's the right thing to do, but because God looks out at us through the stranger's eyes. He explains, Benedict tells us to offer an open heart, a stance of availability, and to look for God lurking in every single person who comes through the door. There seems like no better time to revisit the Messiah Project. Although there was plenty to be angry about 10 years ago, though we Americans had largely long given up civility and compromise and respect, 2010 seems almost quaint by today's standards. I don't want to minimize the realities of a decade ago, but honestly, how much lower can we go? If I'm being honest, I would have to tell you that right now, this story, the Messiah is among us, the story about seeing the divine in every person, I don't really like this story. I want to tell this story to go away, to take its message and just go far, far away. I want to turn away from the people who are doing such damage to our planet, to our fellow human beings, the people who are so self-absorbed, caring only about their own status, their own wealth, their own careers, their own legacies, to care about the destruction they're causing, the hate they're stoking, the people they're killing, and the planet they're decimating. It is difficult work, possibly the work of a lifetime, to fully embrace and live out our first Unitarian Universalist principle, which calls on us to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. I think that a lot of us consider this principle to be about affirming the worth and dignity of the oppressed, of people on the margins. But when it comes to affirming the worth and dignity of those of the powerful, the corrupt, or those with deplorable ideas, outright bigots, or those who fit all of the above, that's when it becomes a whole new challenge. The work of a lifetime for some of us, for sure. It's hard to imagine that in the story, the monastery is home to anyone like that. I imagine that the monks in the story are mere nuisances or annoyances to the others. What then in 2020, in a time such as this, does the story have to offer? What might a Messiah Project look like today? How can a story urging us to see the goodness in those we've already dehumanized possibly reach us? When I reread the story recently, a line caught my attention, a line to which I had scarcely paid attention previously. It comes toward the very end. Could it be me? Much is made of the unlikeliness of each of the different monks being the one, the so-called Messiah, and yet each one was a possibility. And then there's this little question tacked on at the end that someone asked, could it be me? This question to me turns the story on its head. Suddenly we're being asked not to see the divine in everyone else, but to see it in ourselves. What does that possibility mean for us today in 2020? Some 5 or 6 years ago, I first heard the name Eddie Hilsum, who was described to me as an adult Anne Frank, whom nobody has heard of. Sometimes called a mystic of the Holocaust, Eddie was an emotionally distraught, reckless, young Dutch Jewish woman when the Nazis first occupied Holland in 1940. Over the course of just a couple of years, Eddie, and that's E-T-T-Y, it's a derivative of Esther. Eddie went from being a confused, wayward, and volatile young adult to being a virtual angel to prisoners in Westerbork, a transit camp in Holland where Jews were sent before being moved to concentration camps. A woman filled with gratitude and a deep understanding of God's grace. I have read all of Eddie's published journals and letters, and her transformation is remarkable. One can't say for certain how the transformation occurred, though it would seem to be a combination of forces, a journaling practice, the blossoming of a unique kind of mentoring relationship, an unflinching ability to be honest with and about herself, all in the context of horrific world events. But this is what is known. At some point after she began journaling, she acquired such a strong belief in God that she often fell to her knees as if drawn by an unknown force to pray. And this is also known. To Eddie, God was not something outside of herself, but something deep within. In 1941, she wrote, I regained contact with myself, with the deepest and best in me, which I call God. In his book, Eddie Hilsum, A Life Transformed, Patrick Woodhouse writes, as she contemplates the helplessness of her people, their suffering and their fate, her task, she realizes, is not in bitterness to abandon faith in God, but to look after God and to care for God, for she knows that if they lose God, they lose everything. Their humanity, their integrity, their beauty as people, their life. And so God becomes to her a vulnerable presence to be looked after and cherished in the human heart. Eddie Hilsum was someone who had a deep faith that God resided within her. She tended to that divine presence through prayer and gratitude. Though she was held in a transit camp, ultimately bound for Auschwitz, remarkably, she maintained a deep sense of gratitude and peace. She was an angel to many in the camp, offering kindness and compassion to all. She was a source of love and joy to all who met her, a living embodiment of unconditional love. She was not at all naive about what was happening in the world, but was able to face it with a rare inner strength. She writes, the misery here is quite terrible, and yet, late at night, when the day has slunk away into the depths behind me, I often walk with a spring in my step along the barbed wire. And then time and again, it soars straight from my heart. I can't help it. That's just the way it is, like some elementary force. The feeling that life is glorious and magnificent, and that one day we shall be building a whole new world. Against every new outrage and every fresh horror, we shall put up one more piece of love and goodness, drawing strength from within ourselves. We may suffer, but we must not succumb. Also remarkable is her refusal to hate and see her captors as anything less than human beings. German soldiers suffer as well, she writes at one point. There are no frontiers between suffering people, and we must pray for them all. At another, she describes looking into the face of a guard and seeing the human being there. If God is in her, then God resides too in the German soldier. Eddie Hilsum, who died in Auschwitz in 1943, spent the last few years of her life fully in touch with the divine source within. And because of that, she was able to live a life of purpose and meaning. It is as if Eddie Hilsum were one of the monks in the monastery, the one who, when told the Messiah was among them, asked, "Could it be me?" This then feels like my new Messiah project, to continually ask myself, could it be me? What would happen if that were to be so? How would I respond to all that is going on in the world? This too, for many of us, is the work of a lifetime, to come to understand ourselves truly as the hands of God, to have such strong faith and a piece of the divine that resides within, that we're able to live as loving presences while still reckoning with our righteous anger and working to fight injustice. I feel this work calling to me. I hear its whispers in the early morning, before sunrise, when I practice yoga, when I meditate or pray, when I sit on my porch and watch the sunrise. I feel shimmers of it when I walk in the woods and pause to lean my back against a tree. Whispers, shimmers, and then it's gone. But I persevere, having faith that with more practice, the whispers and shimmers will grow stronger and more sustained. Could it be me? Let us ask ourselves, could it be me? Amen, and blessed be. Please join in singing hymn number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, when we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Please join me in the words of our unison benediction. May the
Love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always.
And I leave you with this blessing from John O'Donohue. May we live this day compassionate of heart, clear in word, gracious in awareness, courageous in thought, generous in love. Go in peace, friends, and return again in great joy.